Everdark, Episode 94, Learning. Last on Everdark, Damon, Julian, and the others meet an adoring vampire public. Julian realizes that he truly is a prince, and not some ordinary vampire a little more. Balthazar signaled William every time a person with alliances or sympathies to Callie neared the front of the line. They tried to leave, of course, the moment they had seen what happened to the Councillor Devinus. That meant that Ravenscroft Manor was the last place they had wanted to be. But Balthazar had forced them to line up just like all of the rest of the crowd so they could be discreetly removed. The moment they came to the back doors near Seer, they would step out of line and William would usher them inside. Seer's blind gaze followed them and she would whisper something to Sophia, who would nod knowingly. The other vampires who noticed them go, and there were not many because they were so focused on Damon, merely thought that they had business with House Ravenscroft. And they did, in a way. Mephi had fallen asleep at some point during the bowing and scraping and asking for blessings. He had thought to give Mephi to Sophia, to take him to his brothers and sisters to sleep in a furry puddle. But Mephi had cried piteously when he had tried to remove the kitten's claws from his clothes and his shoulder. Yes, Mephi had drawn blood, but it was out of love. Balthazar turned his head to kiss Mephi's head every once in a while when tension started filling him to overflowing, being around all these people who had not thought him worthy to be a part of vampiric society. The kitten would let out little meows every time he did and snuggle closer. Beside him, Elgar shifted from foot to foot. He was murmuring to Iros's skull, and Balthazar wasn't sure if Elgar was talking to him, or the skull, or both. They were not loyal. No, they were not. But they are of the bloodline unless Master determines to start again, Elgar was saying. Kill them all, Elgar? So bloodthirsty. Balthazar still wasn't sure if Elgar was talking about him or was serious. If they are not loyal, then they do not deserve the gift, Elgar responded and cuddled the skull. And despite the fact that he agreed with Elgar that they had not been loyal to him, or to the immortal Iros either, he couldn't imagine killing them or asking Damon to use Armageddon on them instead. William came to his other side. Balthazar leaned down and William whispered,
I wanted to give you a report.
Is there something to report already? Balthazar tried not to be impressed. It wasn't that his people didn't do as he asked. They did. But it had always been rather loose leadership. Now they were stepping up. William gave him an arch look.
Of course.
And why are we speaking out loud? Balthazar whispered back.
Too many powerful Iros here that could overhear us. Not you, but the rest of us.
William reminded him. Right. Okay. Report, William. William grinned and said,
Isabel and Elena are handling the traitors. Sophia's brought us some info to get more out of them.
So that's what they are doing. Balthazar glanced over at Seer, who nodded to him.
Uh-huh. You letting Sophia get those kittens earned you some intel.
William laughed. He reached up and petted Mephi between the ears.
Or did you totally psych them out and want the kittens for yourself?
Balthazar just smiled mysteriously. So what is this intel?
Some of them have been inside lasting recently. They're giving us maps and locations, like where Callie's rooms are and other information on important spots.
William told him, eyes glowing at the thought of getting into those areas and taking some revenge. Do they actually know Artemis is Callie? Balthazar asked. Their minds hadn't used the word Callie. He had just interpreted their thoughts that way because he knew who Artemis Eleusius really was. That was one of the dangers of mind reading. One's own mind mixed with the others. William shook his head.
No, they believe he's their savior. He claims to have been turned by Callie, who was, of course, one of the voices of reason against all other immortals, and warns Damon is an unfit steward, that he is selfish and thinks only of his fledgling.
Balthazar let out a faint laugh as he scanned the adoring crowd for the next infiltrator. He has serious balls to tell them that.
Seeing what our king did to Councillor Devinus, they believe him. They think that the immortals are too powerful. They think that if they let Damon take over without a fight, they'll be signing their own enslavement.
William shrugged. If that were true, we'd already be out of luck. Balthazar said dryly.
True, but we're not talking about reasonable people here. Damon and you coming back is causing a crisis. They are all freaked out. Their minds are a mess to deal with. But Elena and Isabel are slugging in and dragging out anything good.
William continued.
Fiona was hoping to learn where Callie spends his time, so she could picture it and teleport in with Damon.
Would Callie stay where he's expected to be? If he's smart, and I'm betting he is, he might not even be in lasting any longer. Balthazar frowned.
Oh, that's true. Well, we'll see if there is any indication of that.
William suggested. The assumption is that he's holed up in lasting, but we don't know that. We think he's still in Artemis Eleusis' form, but we don't know that either. Balthazar murmured. Callie can just slip into another body, then another and another and another, and we'll never find him. In fact, Callie could be there, in the crowd. Balthazar tightened his hand on the back of the throne. Elgar must have noticed this. He stopped stroking the skull to reach over and stroke Balthazar's arm. Do not worry, master. You would know Callie's mind. He cannot hide from you or our king. Not anywhere nearby, Elgar murmured. He hoped Elgar was right. Unless Callie was able to block all of his thoughts, Balthazar would likely know it was him. There would be a stray memory or something that would trip Callie up. And even if he was able to block them, that fact alone would alert Balthazar or Damon to the other immortal's presence. Balthazar glanced over at Damon, who was smiling benevolently and nodding to each person who bowed, looking quite willing to sit there forever and greet each one of them. Before seeing Damon in action in Solace and here, Balthazar would have thought that his king was arrogant and ignoring risks. But Damon wasn't arrogant. His powers were beyond Balthazar's understanding. So if Damon wasn't worried, then he shouldn't be. But still, he wanted to go inside and interrogate these people himself. I think we've gotten them all, William. If I find more, I'll contact you. Go inside and report back if there's something more that strikes you. Balthazar told him. William looked at the crowd that seemed never-ending.
I didn't know there were this many Iros.
Unfortunately, Balthazar murmured.
You don't like adoration, Balthazar?
William teased. It has its moments. Balthazar's lips pressed together. He was surprised he did not. Every face he saw held a memory of feeling the odd man out as a vampire, of pleading for help and getting none, of pretending not to need help when he very obviously did, of being rejected when he did what had to be done. To see them doff their cap and tentatively reach out to him to make a connection. But it felt too late, and yet, when he had been thinking about this earlier, Damon had reached out to him. You have righteous anger here, my friend, Damon had said, but you must let it go. Really? Must I? Balthazar had asked with a raised eyebrow. Damon had glanced over at him with a gentle smile on his face that diffused Balthazar's annoyance to be told to get over something that was so sharp still against his breast. I would recommend it, because you are the immortal Iros, and these are your people, Damon said. Balthazar wrapped his arms around his chest. They weren't there when it mattered. Elgar buried himself in the earth like a worm to stay with my corpse. And unfortunately, he's still holding on to part of it. Him I can get behind, but these people who stayed silent at best or sentenced me to exile, what do I owe them? Nothing. You fear that you only matter to them because of what they can get from being close to you? Damon posed this as a question, but it was a statement. You know some will, and your gift will allow you to see it all. This is nothing new, but you are hurting, my friend. And I hurt for you. Damon sent a mental hold to him. Balthazar felt embraced. He smiled. I don't want you to hurt, Damon. This is a moment of triumph for you. One of many, I'm sure. Ignore me. I want to help you. Damon said again with a mental hug. I want you to see the possibilities and not the old phantoms. Yes, I see that. I will try to embrace it. Balthazar answered him. But he hadn't been able to shake it, yet he had to stay for the moment. He couldn't just disappear for no good reason. Balthazar reached over and ruffled William's hair. which had the teenage-looking vampire scowling at him and rearing back just like a cat might, except Mephi never reared away from him. "Go inside, William. I'm fine," Balthazar said, realizing the other vampire was lingering because of his bad mood. William turned on his heel with a wave and disappeared inside again. "You are anxious to get away," Damon said to him. "I just want things settled," Balthazar admitted. "That will not happen for some time." Damon's voice was filled with amusement. "Wonderful," Balthazar shook his head. "Never a dull moment with you." "I wouldn't want you growing bored, Iros." "No, you never let me." "Oh, looks like things are getting even more interesting. House Winter has arrived."
On my subscription site, I have many completed gay romantic serial stories in the members-only library. One of these is Draken. Here's a summary. Poor student Sebastian grew up having a crush on his older rich neighbor Fallon. When the handsome man starts courting him, Sebastian can hardly believe it. But their developing love is threatened by Fallon's family's deep secret. They're all immortal dragon shifters. Draken was my first dragon shifter story, and though it's very different from Dragon's Reign, you can clearly see how some ideas from Draken carried over. It's one of my shorter serials at around 180,000 words, and if you become a member, be sure to check it out. There's some beautiful digital artwork by Mathia Arconiel too. I'll post a link to the stories so you can read the first 5 chapters for free.
House Winter. Damon's gaze went to where Balthazar was looking. 6 figures in black tunics and robes which appeared to be something between Jedi outfits and medieval times characters approached. The leader was a woman with skin the color of burnt caramel. She stood only slightly over 5 feet and was solidly built. Her face was round, and he seemingly would have called it kind, if not for the fact that every vampire was partly predator, at least. "They are the oldest Iros house," Balthazar explained. "Some of them supposedly were around from before the war, but that's a rumor. I never actually met one of them before. They are pretty isolated. Other than Elgar and Councillor Devinus, they likely had the most ancient Iros vampires." Balthazar stiffened as he wondered if one or more of them was his fledglings. He was just getting used to having Elgar around. He didn't want more fledglings. Not yet, anyways. "They are not old enough, Master. They are not children like many of these vampires, but they are not your fledglings, nor parts of your inner circle," Elgar told him. These vampires bowed low to Damon before they turned matching silver eyes onto him. The leader spoke to Arceus.
"Confessor Arceus, my name is Rajani. I am the ambassador of House Winter, and these are high members of our house. We would most humbly ask to speak to Iros privately. If that would be possible, we have word on the activities of the one calling himself Artemis Alucius."
"Go speak to them, Iros. I will listen in from here," Damon urged. "I will speak with you," Balthazar told Rajani, and gestured for them to go inside. The 6 House Winter vampires bowed and then proceeded inside. Christian leaned forward to catch his eye as he noted Balthazar moving. He gestured, however, for Christian to stay. There should be a member of his house out here, and Julian looked like he needed the support. "Elgar, come with me. I am curious about your thoughts," Balthazar said. He also was very sure that Elgar would curl into a ball if left alone, even with the skull for company. "Of course, Master." And Elgar tucked himself practically as close to Balthazar as Mephi did. Arceus caught his arm as he was passing by. His expression was slightly alarmed. His thoughts were sparking.
"They're dressed for war, Balthazar."
"You mean they don't always dress like that?" Balthazar gave him a half grin. "Good to know. I'll keep you in the loop."
"Do you want me to accompany you?"
Arceus wasn't amused, but still was alert. "No, stay out here. Keep the crowd moving. Seek out for any minds that are aligned with Callie, and keep an eye on Christian. He and Julian find trouble as easy as breathing," Balthazar instructed. "I will be fine." "I will keep my master safe," Elgar said softly, staring at the skull again and not at Balthazar or Arceus.
I appreciate that.
Arceus said with an indulgent smile at Elgar. With one final pat on Arceus's shoulder, Balthazar and Elgar went inside. The House Winter members stood silently in the hallway, waiting for him. "Come this way," Balthazar said. He led them to his study. He rarely used it, but now it felt appropriate. He hoped there wouldn't be dust bunnies everywhere, though the staff was quite assiduous. As they walked, Balthazar scanned the minds of House Winter. All of them had shields up, but they were suspiciously easy to break through. Yet their thoughts were strangely surface. They thought of the beauty of his home, the impressive nature of his people, their curiosity about Elgar, which they identified as very old, and other non-interesting and non-revealing. He knew that this was yet another shield. He was certain that he would have to break through many of them like onion skins to get at the truth. There wasn't enough time to work his way down to the truth between where they were now and his office, unless he chose to simply shatter their minds. "Is it necessary, Damon?" Balthazar asked. "No. There is some perfidy here, but you can win them over," Damon told him. "Prove to them you are Iros, and they will fall in line. They will be useful allies to have. I have faith in you." "No pressure," Balthazar laughed dryly. "You are deserving of respect and love," Damon responded simply. These things he said were so simple and true, and absolutely soul-shattering. I wanted my master to say that to me. Balthazar's mind voice was tight. I wanted him to feel that, but he tortured me by laughing at those needs. He said it was weak, but then you say them like they are nothing. They are not nothing. You are worthy of them, Iros, Damon told him with a gentle patience. I call you my best friend, but I would also call you a fledgling. Balthazar's throat squeezed. I shouldn't want that. Your friendship is enough. I need to stand on my own and be protective of you. Do not tell Julian that a fledgling cannot be protective of his master. Damon cautioned him with a laugh. Balthazar, you are worthy, and I will keep telling you that until you believe it. Balthazar did not have a chance to say anything more, because they had reached his office. He pushed open the door and saw the familiar mahogany desk with a high-backed chair, the green-shaded banker's lamp, and 2 chairs facing the desk. There was a sleek laptop on top of the desk, a single Mont Blanc pen, and fine, heavy stationery. The fire was set, but not lit. The light was on. He took his place behind the desk, folding his hands together on his lap as he crossed his legs. He leaned back to face them. Elgar stood beside him, a black raven at his side. Balthazar regarded his visitors evenly as Rajani took a seat, while a man nearly twice her height took the other chair. To what do I owe the honor of having House Winter in my home? Balthazar asked, and he knew he sounded a little acidic. Rajani was the one to speak for the group.
We have been monitoring the situation with Artemis Lucius for some time. It is our belief that he is not who he says he is.
His Kali, Balthazar stated bluntly. Rajani nodded as if this confirmed what she knew.
Yes, that would conform to what we believed.
Do you have anything else to offer, or just more of what we already know? Balthazar knew he still sounded crisp. Elgar, he noted, was not moving at all, but intensely listening to the conversation and likely other things from the members of House Winter's minds. He was glad he had brought his useful fledgling.
You are not pleased with us,
Rajani stated rather than asked.
You are not pleased with anyone outside of your house, and, of course, King Damon and his fledgling.
Balthazar considered what he should say. He could lie, but that would make him seem weak. He could evade, but the same thing would result, and part of him wanted to howl. So he would howl at her, in the most controlled way possible. He leaned forward, resting his forearms on the desktop. You know what Roan Tithe was? Balthazar said quietly. He didn't ask them if they knew who he was. All of you knew. But you did nothing. Your house is the oldest. Your house could have stepped in and stopped it, but you never even supported our requests for help. Rajani sat still. She did not blink. She did not tell him he was wrong. She listened. and he knew that he was revealing something of himself to her, but he did not care. "We are blood!" Balthazar slammed a hand against his chest. "Who should I hope to have my back but you? All of you. But you. Especially because Rome was no threat to you and the council would not have acted against you. But you remained silent." The urge to throw the lamp at her came over him, but he didn't do that. "Yet here you are, now to offer me useless information that I already know." His cheeks were flushed. His breathing came in short gasps. He was shaking with rage. "All of you deserve nothing from me. I should let you rot. I should tell Damon that I want a clean slate to start again. Tell me why I shouldn't." Balthazar roared. His voice echoed in the room. Everyone else was so silent that it was as if he were the only one there. Elgar put a hand on his shoulder and squeezed. He felt Elgar's love and pain for him.
As Iros, would this be the vision you would have for us? To care for one another? To be responsible for one another?
Rajani asked him. "Yes," he said, and he was surprised by how much he meant it. "All the other houses treat us like shit. That might change because of my relationship to Damon, but the truth is, we should have each other's backs, because no one else will." Rajani nodded.
I see.
"Do you?" Elgar asked softly. "Iros are normally very cerebral. They think strategically. Iros is telling you something from the heart. Can you change your face to incorporate what he wants as the essence of his bloodline?" Elgar asked. Rajani again sat quietly.
I am not certain.
Rage bubbled underneath Balthazar's skin. She wouldn't respect what he, Iros, wanted from his own bloodline? Then damn her to hell and—
But
Rajani continued.
I want to.
Rajani smiled at him. Her whole face smiled. Her mind was open, and he saw that she was genuine. Still, he should not forgive so easily, or at all. She had not asked for it. Yet he was exhausted, more exhausted than he could say. Balthazar's anger sputtered. He blinked. "Do you really?"
Yes, I do. We do.
"It's hard for me to see your actions now as anything other than an attempt to save yourselves."
You are right. It does appear that way, but we were not as faithless as you think.
She lowered her head.
It was not just Arceus's words that stopped you from being given your second death, Iros.
You spoke up?" Balthazar asked. His emotions were too much in a twist to be sure of the truth of that. "She spoke to the council," Elgar said as he read her mind. "She said that Roan Tithe had been a stain on the Iros bloodline, that you did what had to be done, put down a rabid animal."
But that was not enough.
Rajani answered softly.
Camon overruled us. Or I should say that Artemis Calli did through him.
Balthazar thought of Camon rotting in that cell in the spire. Oh, he could stay there for quite a bit more time, most definitely.
But I do admit that our view has been that we can only protect those in our house. Perhaps we were wrong not to band together and realize the strength in our numbers.
Rajani admitted.
With you returned to us, Iros, things could change. We could change.
Balthazar had no real desire to lead anyone or anything at that moment. His house was enough. And he had only taken on the reins of leadership because he'd had to. He had killed Roan Tithe. He had to make things better for all of them, and now he had the opportunity to make things better for all of the Iros. Were there those that suffered in other houses that he did not know about right now? Yes, he was sure there were. And I could change that. I could make sure that there are no more Roan Tithes ever again, but only if I take ownership of being an immortal and take control of my bloodline. So you would be behind me if I wanted these changes? Balthazar challenged her. Rajani nodded.
It would be a pleasure, Iros.
Balthazar contemplated this. Again, was she saying this to keep her second life? Probably. At least partially, but she also meant it. She did want to serve him as he wanted to be served. I don't expect perfection. I am not perfect, he admitted. He could imagine Christian saying,
Far from it.
He found a smile coming to his lips at that thought, but pressed on, leaning back in his seat as he said, What I do expect is loyalty and the good old college try. Rajani smiled.
Of course, but I would endeavor to do more than that. All of House Winter would.
He stared at her curiously. She really did want to impress him. But words were easy, actions a bit harder. And though he might puff himself up, he really was capable of at least most of what he said he could do. You're so willing to follow me. You know that makes me distrust you, don't you? Balthazar asked dryly.
I'm afraid the truth is the truth, Iros.
She shrugged. Well, let's say I believe you. Tell me what you can offer.
There have been those of us who have looked into minds far beyond ourselves and have sensed.
Rajani paused, looking thoughtful.
We have sensed the minds of ancients, of immortals, and we have known about the lies of the Order for some time.
Yes, the Order. Balthazar pursed his mouth. The fact that you've remained silent about that really doesn't put you in my good graces.
Understandable, but our knowledge was dangerous. Sharing it too widely would have only brought the might of the Order down against anyone who knew.
She pointed out. Quite.
But you want something practical from me. Understandable. So let me tell you something I think that you do not know.
What? He asked her, curious despite himself. She smiled.
Artemis Eleusis is not the only body that Callie occupies. They have many, and we know them all.
Join us next time for episode 95. My enemies, my own.
If you want to support this podcast and get the unedited episodes, we actually have something better than a Patreon. I have my own serial subscription website, wraithrain.com. It's an old-fashioned paywall site, just like Netflix or Crunchyroll. With a membership, you do get the uncut versions of Everdark with no intros, outros, or edited parts. Just the chapters as they were meant to be heard before we've had to make it all Disney safe. If this sounds interesting to you, try us out for a month. The link to sign up is in the notes. The most you'll pay is $9.95 a month, and you'll be directly supporting us, real people, not big corporations like Amazon or Netflix, not content created with AI. Wraithrain is a small team of actual humans doing the best we can to transport you with romantic action and adventure stories. We really thank you for your support.